The situation in court was explosive, and you won't believe it. Diddy, the music entrepreneur who's normally all about the swagger, encountered a judge who wasn't having any of it. Diddy's cocky attitude clashed hard with the judge's noons approach, and things got heated fast. Can a superstar's fame really help him when the stakes are this high? The case and public interest, it was like any other day in the courtroom until Diddy walked in, and suddenly everything changed. You know how it is with these high-profile celebrities? They always bring a certain vibe, right? But this time it was more than just the usual buzz. This was different. There was a kind of tension in the air, almost like everyone was waiting for something big to happen. And boy, did it happen as soon as Diddy strolled in. He didn't look like someone worried about his future, far from it. The guy was confident, almost too confident, and let me tell you that confidence quickly turned into arrogance. It was like he was in his own world, completely detached from the gravity of the situation. He was facing some serious accusation stuff that could put anyone else behind bars for a long time. But he was acting like he was above it all. It's almost as if he thought his fame and fortune would protect him from whatever was coming his way. Now, most of us would be a nervous wreck in his position, right? Not did he seemed completely unafraid. As the hearing began, he casually leaned back, showing zero respect for the whole process. It was as if he believed the rules didn't apply to him. He even smirked a couple of times, which only made things worse. The judge was visibly annoyed, and you could tell that Diddy's attitude wasn't helping his case at all. This wasn't just any court after all. This was federal court with judges who don't play around. The judge, a seasoned individual who had seen it all, was clearly not amused. You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't having any of Diddy's nonchalant attitude. And then it happened. The judge, who had been patiently waiting for Diddy to get serious, finally lost his cool. He slammed his gavel, a loud crack that echoed through the room, bringing everyone's attention to the front. You could feel the shock through the courtroom. Judge leaned forward, looking straight at Diddy, and delivered a caustic and unforgettable speech. He made it clear to Diddy that this was not a game, an award presentation, or a music video. The judge reminded him that he was facing serious accusations that might ruin his life, and that it was no longer just about Diddy, but also about the people he had harmed and the need for justice. This was real life, and he needed to start acting like it. The judge's tone was firm, almost fatherly in a way, but there was no mistaking the frustration in his voice. He was angry, really angry, and you could tell that Diddy wasn't used to being talked to like that. For a moment, he looked like he was taken aback, like he hadn't expected anyone to call him out so directly. But then, just as quickly, that expression returned, as if he still thought he could brush it all off. That's when things took serious turn. The judge, now fully fired up, started listing out all the reasons why Diddy's behavior was unacceptable. He talked about how the courtroom demanded respect, and how Diddy's attitude was an insult to everyone present. You could feel the tension rising with every word. People in the room were holding their breath, waiting to see how Diddy would react. But Diddy just sat there, still looking like he was above it all. It was infuriating, honestly. How could someone be so dismissive when so much was at stake? The judge didn't stop. There he went on to remind Diddy about the seriousness of the charges he was facing, which included allegations, among other things. These weren't the kind of charges you can just shrug off. They were the kind that could put someone away for a long time, but Diddy didn't seem to care. He was still sitting there, cool as a cucumber, as if he hadn't heard a word. It was like watching a train rew in slow motion. You knew things were only going to get worse, but you couldn't look away. At one point, Diddy's lawyer tried to step in, probably hoping to calm things down, but the judge was having none of it. He raised his hand to silence the lawyer and went right back to addressing Diddy directly. This was personal now. The judge was making it clear that he wasn't going to let Diddy's attitude slide. He was there to uphold the law, and Diddy's fame meant nothing to him. It was almost as if the judge was speaking for everyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of celebrity privilege. He was there to remind Diddy that no one, not even a music mogul, was above the law. You could feel the energy shift in the room. The audience, who had been silently watching, seemed to be rooting for the judge. It was like they wanted to see Diddy brought down a peg, and for a moment it felt like he was Diddy's. Confidence wavered just a bit as the judge's words finally seemed to hit home, but then just as quickly he shrugged it off again, like it was all part of some show he was putting on. It was infuriating to watch. Here it was someone who had been given every advantage in life, acting like the rules didn't apply to him. The judge wasn't done yet. He continued talking about how Diddy's actions had real consequences for real people. He mentioned the impact that these kinds of allegations could have on others, how they could ruin lives. And yet here was Diddy acting like it was all some kind of joke. It was a harsh reminder that for some people, the world really does revolve around them. Or at least they think it does. But the judge was there to remind him and everyone else watching that reality doesn't work that way. As the judge wrapped up his speech, there was a palpable sense of relief in the room. It was as if everyone had been holding their breath, waiting for someone to finally put Diddy in his place, and the judge had done just that. But did he? He just sat there, still smirking, as if he hadn't heard a word. It was almost surreal. How could someone be so disconnected from the reality of the situation? He seemed to be living in a fantasy world where there were no consequences, but this time there were, and the judge made it apparent that he would have to deal with them whether he liked it or not. This was by no means the end of the matter. The judge had drawn a line in the sand, and Diddy was on the wrong side of it. The only question now was how far Diddy would go to defend his haughtiness. Would he finally realize how serious the situation was, or would he keep acting as though nothing mattered? After that heated exchange between Diddy and the judge, you would think he would finally get his act together and realize how troubled he was. But nope, this is Diddy, and anything that seems to stoke his fire even more. Diddy's legal team quickly moved into action, prepared to file a full-scale appeal against the bail denial. I mean, Diddy wasn't about to sit in a cell if he could help it. He still had moves to make and a reputation to protect, so he called in the big guns. You'd think his existing legal team would be enough, but no, Diddy wanted the best of the best, so he brought in 2 new powerhouse attorneys to beef up his defense. These weren't just any lawyers. They were the kind who usually swoop in to save the day for listers like him. There was Anthony Rico, a big-name trial lawyer known for his knack at getting clients out of F-spots, and then Alexander Shapiro, who was famous for handling high-stakes appeals together. They were like Diddy's dream team, handpicked to tackle the mountain of charges he was facing. But here's the thing, no matter how top-noted his lawyers were, he still had a massive challenge on his hands. His bail appeal wasn't just about whether he'd be allowed to go home while he waited for his trial. It was about proving that he wasn't a risk to others and that he'd play by the rules if he was let out, and this was where things got sticky. His lawyers tried to paint him as someone who posed no danger, promising that he'd put up a huge bail amount, something like $50 million, and even agree to strict conditions like house arrest and an ankle monitor. They assured the court that he'd have no female visitors outside his family, and he was willing to sell his private plane to prove he wasn't a flight risk. The courtroom was buzzing with this promise of $50 million bail, an amount that could turn anyone's head. You could almost feel the tension as Diddy's team made their case, throwing out numbers and guarantees, doing everything they could to sway the judge. But the prosecution wasn't about to let him off that easily. They fired back, laying out all the reasons why they believed he was still a danger, and they had their own pile of evidence that painted a very different picture of Diddy. According to the prosecution, Diddy wasn't just a celebrity trying to clear his name. He was someone who had already shown a willingness to manipulate people to get what he wanted. They claimed that even from behind bars, he had been contacting witnesses, allegedly trying to bribe them into silence or offering them money to change their stories. That's some pretty heavy stuff, right? I mean, if true, it really showed that Diddy wasn't just fighting for his freedom. He was doing whatever it took to protect his image. And that wasn't even the half of it. It wasn't just about having money. It was about how he allegedly used it to control the narrative. The prosecution continued by claiming that Diddy's high-profile status made him an expert at staying one step ahead of the law. They cited the fact that he had all these resources at his disposal, including his clothing line and liquor brand, and they thought he had previously used his wealth to shield himself from consequences.